Today. I'm going to talk to you today about leading through the green light. I'm going to talk to you about the most important leadership characteristic that you can practice to be successful. Now, each one of you is a leader. No matter who you are or what you do, each individual person in this room is a leader. And I ask you the question, have you met that leader? The greatest thing you are ever going to do in your life has yet to happen. The greatest thing you are ever going to do in your life has yet to happen. Isn't that something to look forward to? Now, while you're going through your life, you're going to, if you live to be 70 years old, and I would hope that's much longer for you, but if you live to be 70 years old, you can expect that you will spend 5 years and 9 months in some form of transportation. Plane, train, boat, car. And of those 70 years, you can expect that you will spend 6 months in a car sitting at a red light. But leadership is a green light. Leadership's all about being in action, right? So why do we get stopped? Why do we get stopped? Well, a lot of leaders rise up and they get stopped in their lives because they have myths that are in their way. They get challenges that don't become unchallenged. So things like myths like, don't tell me how to run my business, or I know it all. I know it all was my problem many years ago when I ran a small business in Toronto. It was very hard for me to receive feedback. And these myths and realities build up, and a lot of times, one of the myths and realities that leaders carry around is ego. And the egos go unchallenged. In fact, I would say that probably that's one of the biggest leadership problems that we have going right now around the world, is that egos go unchallenged. Now, this whole concept of being a green light leader and practicing this trait that I want to share with you, a parallel for that is how emergency vehicles work in many major cities. Around the world, many emergency vehicles have the ability to anticipate what's happening 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 blocks away, and to transmit ahead and to change a red light to a green light, so that when they reach that intersection, they're actually able to go right through and respond faster to an emergency scene. Did you know that? You may or may not have known that. I'm advocating that you be a green light leader. We all have that same ability within us. We all have the same ability to change the amber lights and the red lights to green lights. So how do we do that? Well, I want to talk to you a little bit for a minute about two types of leadership theory. There's the heroic leadership theory. The stereotypical CEO is actually where you would find the heroic leadership theory. And the leadership theory would say that a stereotypical CEO rises up in the organization. They communicate vision, mission, values, and plans, and goals, and they get everybody in action, and everybody goes out, and they accomplish things for the organization. Sounds great, right? Yes. And that's called the heroic leadership model. Now, the problem with the heroic leadership model is two things. First of all, it's often based on charisma. You know, we have lots and lots of examples in history of really, really heroic leaders, and they are portrayed by, you know, fantastic Hollywood actors, and you just see all this charisma, and you think, wow, I'd love to have that charisma. But what's underneath charisma? The danger, I'm not saying it is there for sure, but the danger is that what's underneath charisma is narcissism and ego. Now, the second thing is, the heroic leadership model is based on this kind of deficit model concept. Why does the heroic leader need to rise up and accomplish everything in the organization and get all the people to accomplish things in the organization? and communicate things and get the people to get things done? Well, they have to command and they have to communicate and do it because the people can't. And what we're seeing now is a post-heroic model emerging, which is all about the people. And there are many, many titles for post-heroic leadership theories. There are situational leaders, authentic leader, collaborative leader, servant leader. And you'll find that the research shows that all of these leadership theories unlock a lot more value and a lot more results and produce more than the heroic leadership model. So this is the post-heroic. The movement from the single hero to everybody being leaders and everybody being heroes. The number one most important characteristic of this theory of leadership, post-heroic, is humility. Practicing humility. Call it what you will. All the research shows this. Google it and you'll find out. But one piece of research was the very famous book, Good to Great, by Jim Collins and his entire research team that said the number one leadership characteristic you can practice to be successful is humility. And that servant leaders who listen to their people, communicate, look after their needs, and talk to people really authentically and reach out to them, those are the most successful ones, and that is the single trait that makes successful leaders in the post-heroic leadership world successful. So I ask this question: have you met that leader in you? Are you a humble leader? Are you a green light leader? Because humble leaders have this ability to actually look out into their world, similar to traveling through the intersection, and change the red lights to green lights. An example of this type of leader, a servant leader, for example, who practiced humility, and you probably all know, is Mother Teresa. I'm not expecting that you all rush out of here and become Mother Teresa. But the interesting thing, my point here is that humility as a characteristic trait is actually a paradox. So much so that there is a book out there called The Cultural Paradox, or the Calcutta Paradox. And the Calcutta Paradox is when you're practicing this trait of humility, if you talk less, then you actually pull people towards you. If you talk more, then people are actually repelled away from you. And you have to find that kind of balance. So where do you find that balance? Where do you know whether or not you're practicing humility? Well, you look into your environment. So I want to go into the organizational world right now, and I want to go into actually really corporations and talk for a minute about corporations. It's really interesting for me, being an HR professional, to look at the statistics of why people leave organizations. Why do people leave organizations? Well, all the research will tell you that employees join companies and they leave managers. Employees join companies and they leave managers and leaders. And if you look at the statistics, you'll find 17, 31, 65, 75% of the studies all say the people are tired of dealing with their managers and leaders, and they leave that organization because of their manager and leader. And nowadays, the research is so exhausting that people are starting to look more at what keeps employees, what keeps people in an organization. That's called employee engagement, as opposed to why do they leave. And why do managers and leaders have this power and ability? Well, because actually basic traits of humility, communication, listening to people, looking after their needs, those are all career development, promoting people. Those are all things that individuals have control and power over when they're leaders and managers. And if they don't practice them, then people leave. And the statistics show that repeatedly over and over again. Here's a few infographics on that. In this particular one, the boss was distrusting. Top 5 reasons why individuals left of a large sample of employees. The boss distrusted the employees, circled in red, and the boss blamed the employees for their mistakes. Next one, put quite simply, they said their boss was a jerk. And I could go on and on until midnight. I promise you I won't. But let me tell you a little bit of a story. Recently, I lost a manager in my department, a 12-cylinder employee, thousands and thousands of horsepower. And in 2 weeks, that person is going to leave my organization. And 7 years of institutional knowledge is going to walk out the door. Now, we've had conversations. I know her quite well. It's a great career move for her. It's a promotion. It's a different industry. She's moving into a regional role. We all know in Hong Kong that that's a great opportunity. But statistically, if the research says that employees join companies and leave managers, then statistically, I have to look in the mirror of my environment and I have to answer the question, why did she leave me? And I'm struggling with that because I think to myself, hold on a second here, hold on. I got a yellow light here, I got a red light, 5 intersections ahead, hold on. Yellow light, red light, something's wrong. I got to find out what's going on. So we've talked about this, and I'm still sorting this out. And I think to myself, well, you know, I did try to really develop her as an individual. I did try to promote her, like, you know, give her lots of challenges and opportunities. Maybe I leaned on her too much. Possibly as a leader, did I use her as a crutch? That's possible. I'm not sure the exact answer. So how am I going to find out? Well, what I just shared with you was an anecdotal example of someone leaving an organization. I now want to share with you a systematic way you can test. You can look out into your environment. You can do a 360 analysis, which is what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to use a 360 tool to figure out what's going on around me, in my environment, in my organization, to find out what I can find back. You know, what's happening 10 blocks down, 10 intersections down? What are the red lights? How do I turn them back to green? Now, that will be a very scary exercise. 360s are tough sometimes, but they can force humility onto a leader. And that may sound mean, and it might be. But I want you to look into your heart and think, how would you deal with that particular situation? A leader does not rely on their own understanding of themselves. They look out into their environment. But it's a paradox. So what's the paradox? Well, the paradox is that once you look into your environment, you then have to look into your heart and ask yourself, have I met that leader? Am I practicing humility? Is that what's happening ahead for me? Are the lights yellow, red, or green? And that may sound like really fluffy HR speak, but actually it's not. Because if you look into the science of neurocardiology, you'll discover the scientists are discovering amazing things about the human heart. It is actually a mini brain that is capable of operating independently of the brain itself. In fact, the Heart Math Institute will tell you that the heart is an entire global communication system for the body. And it sets up an entire electromagnetic field for my body right now as I stand here and I talk to you, and it keeps everything in sync. In fact, that electromagnetic field has the ability to affect people in my immediate vicinity. So how are you feeling down in the front row? So you can look into your heart, fluffy HR speak, or you can look in your heart into science, because I can tell you that practicing leadership skill development is very much looking into the heart from a scientific perspective. But let's stop and let's go back to looking at the heart from a soft perspective, from a love perspective, a humility perspective. Practicing love and humility as a leadership skill is being studied and is being advocated. For centuries, we've read about it in philosophers' books, educators' books, consultants. But now they're actually looking into love as a leadership skill. And that's being advocated by many senior executives. So I ask you, have you met this leader? The greatest thing you are ever going to do in your life has yet to happen. Isn't that something to look forward to? Have you met that leader? If the answer is yes, are you practicing humility? If the answer is no, that leader is waiting to meet you. And I leave you with this last quote by Teilhard de Chardin.
I took the lamp, and leaving the zone of everyday occupations and relationships where everything seems clear, I went down into my innermost self, to the deep abyss whence I feel dimly that my power of action emanates. But as I moved further and further away from the conventional certainties by which social life is superficially illuminated, I became aware that I was losing contact with myself. At each step of the descent, a new person was disclosed within me, of whose name I was no longer sure, and who no longer obeyed me. And when I had to stop my exploration because the path had faded from beneath my steps, I found a bottomless abyss at my feet, and out of it came, arising I know not from where, the current which I dare to call my life.
My call to action for you is to practice being a green light leader in action using humility. Thank you.